Hello team, welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan MS Pitts. It's Ukraine War Frontline update for the 13th of April 2024. Really appreciate you choosing to spend your time with me when looking at what's going on the front lines. If you don't know what the lines on my map mean, please check out the key on the video at the moment. Pause the video. As you can see when I zoom in, there's no change again to that northeastern front line, Kupiansk to Svatovo to Crimea. That's just quite staggering, really, considering this was supposed to be one of the areas where Kupiansk, particularly where the Russians are gearing up for a big attack, and they have been attacking in a major way towards Terny and Torska down here, the salient west of Crimea, but that seems to have come to a bit of a halt. There's been some movement down in the southern Seversk area over the last 3 or 4 days, but nothing reported today. I'm not sure that Surrey Maps has done any mapping updates for about 24 hours, so that could be why we are not seeing more pins on the map to represent Russian gains. In fact, it's only Deep State and Andrew Perpetua that have any updates, thanks to JR, who has done the mapping today and had a bit of trouble doing that, so I really appreciate that, mate. We come to Bakhmut, where we can see that there are some large gains to the west of Crimea. Now, to the west of Bakhmut. I've got Crimea on my mind there. I was contacted by Zhenya today, who passed on some a message to say that Bodanivka, was not has knocked out the Russians have knocked out our units from NP. Battles are going on the outskirts of the village. In the Cheziv district, Canal, Russians broke through the defense in the southeastern part and are near the 5-story buildings. Enemy aviation feels very free. Okay, so let's put that first bit on the map, and then we'll look at some other sources. So this is from someone on the ground in that area to say that Bodanivka looks to be under Russian control, and probably around here the Russians are moving into the 5-story buildings. I wonder whether that's around here. Or it could be around here. I'm not really too sure. It's quite difficult to see from above with the 2D. But yeah, the Russians are pressuring in both of those areas, and that's represented by the mapping changes from Deep State Mapper and Andrew Perpetua in the Bodanivka area. Deep State more so than Andrew Perpetua, going on probably a different set of sources. Andrew Perpetua waits for a lot of stuff to come out, visual confirmation from videos, and sometimes there's a bit of a lag with those, and that's why he might be behind some of the quicker changes to the mapping, but then he makes sure that he has definite confirmation for his mapping changes. So it's useful to have that span of different sources. So that's what's going on there. And for now, we are keeping the last streets of Ivanivska. Very hot night. Unfortunately, there are losses. So that's talking about Ivanivska down here. You can see that Deep State has some gains for the Russians in that forest area. Considerable gains there before it goes uphill. So let's just put that on the 3D map and look at what's happening there. So the Russians moving through that forest area below the high ground. That is a real worry for the Ukrainians, looking to get some kind of not so much an encirclement, but they are trying to flank the town of Chaziv Yar there. So the Russians are really pressuring in the Chaziv Yar area. Now that the Ukrainians are still fighting in Ivanivska is really interesting, because I was under the impression that possibly they'd given up Ivanivska. Greg Terry was talking about that the other day, but then this is one of Greg's sources now saying actually they're fighting on the outskirts, the last few streets of Ivanivska, so they're still fighting there. And I think that's good news for stopping the Russians sort of overwhelming in the south. As this source says from Zhenya, as I said, after Bodanivka, the Russians will try to go to Kalinivka in order to expand their flanks. So that is interesting. I'm not quite sure where Kalinivka is, whether that's just a part of Chaziv Yar to maybe to the south here or something like that. So I'll have to look to see where Kalinivka is. But nonetheless, you get the idea that it's very difficult around Chaziv Yar. Now, we go to the other sources. This is Flash, or as it's known in Ukrainian now, has renamed itself Bliskavka. Flash News saying, according to Deep State Service, so Deep State Maps, that we just seen the updates there, Russians have captured Bodanivka near Bakhmut. Also, according to the service, they have advanced to the town of Chasiv Yar, and that would be in that area there, no doubt, as well as moving, as mentioned in all those areas. Tim White says, from his sources, Bodanivka near Bakhmut is a concern. Ukraine still control it after fending off assault groups. That's going against the Ukrainians being fully pushed out of there. Chasiv Yar itself is stable, and he goes on to talk about Robotina and Verbove. More invaders gather, probes are repelled, but a big assault could happen again, but that's much further down to the south. And then Tim White talks about, again, Chasiv Yar here by pointing out that screenshots show that Russia is bombing the heck out of Chasiv Yar using those guided glide bombs that we heard about from that source on the ground in the area, all because of no air defense. Planes are under no threat, the Russian planes. To be honest, further south, the invaders may soon take control of another village of Bedichi, or they pretty much have done that, but that's around Avdiivka, so we'll get there in a minute. So yeah, that is not good news for the Ukrainians, as in there's a lot of pressure on them there. The Russians are making advances. And then when we come down to the Avdiivka area, both in the north, this is worrying that the Russians are widening their control up towards Novokonyovo and on the northeastern side of the railway line. And this will help them to push down to the north north of Bedichi, down past the river, as I've talked about, or past the source of the river, as I've talked about over the last week or two. That's where the Russians want to attack. Now, it looks like some huge mapping adjustments for both Deep State Maps and Andrew Perpetua. There's probably so many pins because it was not basically saving, and it was reversing all his changes. That's why I say JR's had a few issues with the mapping today. But you can see that basically that's quite a large area, and I think they're going to be going for this road here. That they almost made it the other day in an assault. Surat Map still has that area under the Russian control, but I'm not sure that is the case. But certainly the other two mappers catching up with Surat Maps there. As I said, that even when Surat Maps makes these claims that aren't true at the time, they often end up becoming true, and so therefore that validates what Surat says in their mind, as far as I can see it. But the way it's going at the moment is the Russians will do an attack, get repelled, do another one, get repelled, do another one, get repelled, or maybe drop a few people, and then after maybe 2-3 days, that area is actually taken, and it's kind of like a Greek tragedy. You kind of know it's coming. It's this grind towards an inexorable end, and yeah, so Surat Maps will make those early calls, which are at the time wrong, but end up later being right. So those are the two main areas of changes. In this area, we can look at what Rebar says for what's happening. This is an overtly pro-Russian source, basically a bit of a propagandistic arm of the Russian government. In the Avdiivka direction to the west, Russian troops are advancing, developing success at the Umanska Yasno-Brodrivka Netailove line. So that is to say, down here, so Umanska, Yasno-Brodivka, and Netailove. So that's the line there. This is where they're going to want to get up to, and the Russians, the Ukrainians will want to. The Ukrainians will want to obviously keep them as far back as possible, but you get a sense that it's going to happen, right? In the area of Umanska, the Russian armed forces are advancing westward, with less than a kilometre to go to the outskirts of the settlement. And in the fields between Tonyenka and Vodyanye, where we've just seen those big increases, the Russian armed forces, under the cover of armoured vehicles, advance up to 3 kilometres wide and 2.8 kilometres deep, taking control of several forest belts east of Yasno-Brodrivka. In the Bedichi area, so that's further to the north of the Avdiivka salient, the Russian armed forces cleared the northern outskirts of the village, taking control of the remaining houses of Central Street. There are no significant changes in Semenivka, as in the middle of those two. Fighting continues in the central parts of the village. Let's go there. So we've got Tonyenka area, and then we've got Bedichi area up there. Confirmation from Rebar that the Russians have taken the whole of the town, which is pretty much what Surak Maps has said, and then that there's fighting in the center of Semenivka, but no changes to control there. That is on the other side of the water of the Derna River and the water course in general. That is a real challenge, I think, for the Ukrainians. That means that the defensive qualities of the high ground and the river course have been compromised. And then just to finish what Rebus say, on the northern flank, Russian troops are developing their offensive in the Novokonyovo area. Over the past few days, control has been established over several forest belts on the southern outskirts of the village. So Novokonyovo, Bedici, Semenivka, Bedici area, Semenivka there, Olivka, and then this larger area from Umanska down to Netalove being under control of, or increasing control of, the Russians. And there you have it. No changes elsewhere, but there will be fighting going on. It is dynamic, and we'll see what Surat Maps has to say when they do get to update their maps imminently, no doubt. Thanks for watching. Please like, subscribe, and share. Really appreciate your support. Take care, and I'll speak to you soon.